So thank you for joining our You've Got Perseverance student webinar. This is the Valentine's Day edition. My name is Sarah Marcotte, and I'm a public engagement specialist for NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, based here on the West Coast in California. So we are so happy you have all joined us today, and it's so wonderful to see so many people supporting our students and classrooms full of kids. So love to see this. So as I said, we are recording this webinar, so keep your mics muted until the time when you get to ask some Q&A. So on behalf of NASA's Perseverance rover mission, we are honoring 11 students today in middle and high school who have shown the unique quality of perseverance in their educational journeys. So this is not necessarily about kids getting the best grades. This is about having the grit and determination to do the best you can, to keep continually improving, and to push through the challenges that life throws at you. So how did we all get here? Well, I'm going to show you a video in which we asked the country, do you know a student who's got perseverance? Let's watch our video.
NASA wants to know, what does perseverance mean to you? Our Perseverance Mars rover and mission teams already know quite a bit what it means to persevere. We found a way to launch the rover from Earth in the middle of a global pandemic. And since surviving the trickiest Mars landing yet, we've continued to overcome unexpected challenges in day-to-day operations and collecting and storing our first rock samples for future return to Earth. When you set your mind on a goal and stick to it, you can accomplish almost anything. Do you know someone who has perseverance? NASA is looking for nominations of students from around the country who've kept moving forward when the going got tough. The You've Got Perseverance Award highlights the grit and determination of the next generation of explorers. Awardees will get to chat with NASA experts and even get a once-in-a-lifetime personalized message direct from the Perseverance rover on Mars. We can't wait to hear how you've got perseverance.
Okay, so these are our 11 awardees today. And, I noticed in that video, some of the NASA people who are on our webinar today are in that video. So that's kind of fun, sharing some of the joys and triumphs of this mission and the times when we had to persevere on our mission. So as part of our congratulations, students, soon you'll be hearing from these people who are on the webinar, our mission team members, and you're going to get a chance to ask them questions. And then they are also going to share some personalized messages sent to each of you directly from Mars. So it's pretty exciting and special things. So you will get a chance to ask them your questions. And I know we have some questions in writing. You can use the chat and you can also ask aloud. So let's go over to Mission Control and meet Beth Duell, who is the mission lead for the Perseverance rover. Beth.
Thanks, Sarah. I would like to introduce myself. My name is Beth Duell, and I really wanted to wish all of you students congratulations. What an exciting time to be with you this morning. As you can see behind me, this is the real life Mission Control in Pasadena, California. We just finished our downlink poll where we looked at all of the data from the vehicle and just finished that a few minutes ago. And you can see much of the team is still here with us today and excited to be participating with you. We also were looking at data from our sister mission, which is Ingenuity, which many of you guys have probably heard of from the helicopter data. We also have a set of team members that's busy working in the other room that's planning Perseverance's next activities. We even have team members all over the world, some of whom are on the webinar to answer questions with you later today. So first, let's talk a little bit more about the mission, and we have a video to play for you guys now. All right, so you guys can see Perseverance here when it was first getting built up in Atlo, which is our assembly, launch, and test operations. And it's the NASA's 5th and most advanced rover to explore the surface of Mars. There you can see the parachute deployment as the rover is landing on the surface. And it launched in the summer of 2020 and landed almost 2 years ago on February 18th of 2021. Since then, we've been busy exploring the landing site at our location in Jezero Crater, taking images and collecting samples to bring back to Earth by a future mission called Mars Sample Return. We just finished dropping our 10th rock core samples back on the surface of Mars, and in many years, hopefully some of you will be working on that mission to help bring them home. And here you can see some images that are shown there of the dropped rock core sample. All right, and actually you can see the shirt that I'm wearing right now is
it's got the cores.
a representative of those 10 samples that we just completed just not long ago, just a few weeks ago. Okay, so now we're going to show you a graphic of how the rover communicates. Okay, how do we get things done on Mars? Well, it's really interesting. I'm going to start here with the rover on the left, and the rover, you can imagine that this is a cycle that's happening every day. So the rover is executing the commands that that our engineers are telling it to do, and then it transmits the data. We have a couple of passes every day where we're transmitting through these 4 orbiters here. Their acronyms are labeled here, but it's Odyssey, Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter, MAVEN, and TGO, and those are multinational orbiters. And then that data is transmitted down to our deep space network. And we have 3 main deep space networks across the world so that we can hear at any time of day. And then once the ground, like what we just did, where we looked at what the data showed us and made sure that everything was ready to go for the next day, and then we do our planning, and then we send those commands back to the rover and tell it what to do for the next bit of its time. So that's how that all works. Okay, so let's see, we explain that, and we can stop sharing that screen. Great. And that's what makes these rooms of mission control such an exciting place. We're finding out what's worked and what challenges we've overcome. So one of the neat things about communicating with Perseverance is that we have the ability to have the rover send specific messages to us. So we're going to play a video now. All right, so here at NASA, at JPL, we build instructions to the rover called sequences. Those were the commands I was talking about earlier. Within those sequences, we can encode messages that get recorded and executed by the rover itself. Then the rover repeats it back down here on Earth. And every student got their own personal message sent back directly from Perseverance. And it looks like your messages are here. So I'm going to carry this laptop over so that I can show you guys the messages that we have displayed up here on this screen. Make it big enough to see. So these are the actual messages that you guys will each see. And you guys will get a copy of this and be able to look at it in detail. But I just wanted to show you that here of it actually came back down from the spacecraft. All right. So as we prepare to share those with you, I'd like to introduce Rick Welch, who's our Deputy Project Manager for the Perseverance rover.
Great. Thank you so much, Beth. And it's great to be here this morning. And, congratulations to all the awardees. I read your stories. They're very inspirational to us, right? We all have challenges in our life, but I think you really faced some challenging times and were able to work through those. And I'm sure your perseverance, if you continue this way, you'll have a very successful life in whatever you choose to do. Maybe that might be an engineer working someday on NASA, maybe something completely different. And so the best wishes to you. I hope your friends and family and teachers have been able to join today. And again, we're happy to have you here join our operational team and look forward to your questions and being able to interact with you in a few minutes. You know, the story of Perseverance and how we got the name for the rover, some of you might know it was through a student naming competition. All our rovers have been named that way. And so some of you might be aware of other school agers, just like yourself, have put in names. And about 3 years ago, that name was selected. That was just at the beginning of the pandemic. And I don't think any of us understood the challenges that global pandemic would have on us in actually getting our rover successfully to the surface of Mars. And it really, you know, Perseverance and the rover has faced many challenges, you know, driving around the surface, and our operations team trying to figure out what's going on sometimes has certainly stumped us for a few days, but we've always been able to get through it and get back to work and continue on with our mission. So without further ado, I'd like to actually play those messages that came all the way from Mars, over 90 million miles away. And it's great to see those messages. And I think we're going to pass it over to questions and answers. So Sarah, back to you.
Sounds good, Rick. Thank you. Thank you. Excellent. So, wow, those messages traveled many millions of miles through our solar system to come back to our deep space network here on Earth. And so you will also be getting a little certificate that has your message written, so you didn't have to remember it right there. So now we will do Q&A. So students, you are able to use the little raise hand icon, if you see at the bottom of your Zoom screen, to indicate that you'd like to ask a question. We do have some questions from students already in writing, and then you can use the chat function. So we'll prioritize our 11 students with questions first, and each student will get to ask several questions, I believe. And then we will wrap it up. So yeah, so here's our instructions. So if you want to ask out loud, great. We'll call you by name, and you could ask a question in the chat. And we do recommend that you keep questions relevant to careers in engineering, to robotics, to our rover, to planet Mars, or to the Ingenuity helicopter. Those are the things that this team knows well and can definitely answer your questions well. And we do have many experts on the line here that are going to be able to answer your questions. So let's get to it. I'm just starting at the top edge of my screen, and I'm looking at David Campos.
Hi, my name is David, and I would like to make this question. If you could give me a piece of advice, what would be the skill that you would recommend me to have if in the future I have the opportunity to work in a space project? And by the way, thank you to this amazing team and to this opportunity. You guys are an inspiration to me. Thank you.
Wow, what a wonderful question. I think the advice, and by the way, I think we mentioned that we do have a whole team of engineers, so we'll make sure that our engineers all get a chance to answer some of the questions that you guys are bringing forward as well. I'll take the first one, which is that I think it's really finding a passion for what you do, and then just just continuing with that passion. And so if it means getting involved in some really fun activities at school, or reading books, or just participating, I think just finding that thing that you really, really love and then continuing with it.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
I mean, he looks like he's already in space. Excellent background. I was like, oh my God, he's on the space station. Wow. Great. Thank you, David. Okay, I have a question from Kriti. Kriti, I'm afraid of pronouncing your last name, so I'm going to say Kriti, and I know you're on the call. So Kriti wants to know, Beth, did Perseverance discover anything new and exciting recently?
Yes, we have. I am going to turn that question over to Daniel, one of our mission managers, to answer that.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Yeah, so I am not a geologist, but I will put my scientist hat on for a second. And I will say that one of the biggest surprises that I know of from landing at this site is that our science team expected to find a lot of sedimentary rock and instead found a lot of igneous rock, which basically is rock that was formed from volcanic processes. And so that was a nice big surprise that we found when we landed, and informed some of the decisions to take some samples and what kind of samples we gathered. And those, as Beth mentioned, are some of the tubes that we just put down on the Martian surface a couple of weeks ago for our future mission, Mars Sample Return, to go grab and bring back. So we're all very excited about that. But of course, we're only 2 years into what is going to be a very long mission, hopefully. And so I'm excited, not just about the cool stuff we've been surprised by us already, but all the interesting things we're going to discover over the next 7 or 8 years. So it should be a lot of fun.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, so I'm going to go next to Carter, though we had your name as Edward. So are you going with Carter these days?
Carter is my middle name, but
Uh-huh.
Edward's my first name. So there's sometimes some confusion with that.
Okay, whichever you prefer. Why don't you ask your question?
My question is, what is the greatest challenge y'all's team has had to overcome since Perseverance landed on Mars?
Ooh, let's see. I am gonna, Rick, why don't you take that one?
Oh, sure. The greatest challenge.
Yeah.
But,
Rick
I
gets
think
the hard one.
for all of us, for operating these rovers millions and millions of miles away, obviously a person can't go and help in the rover if it gets stuck anywhere. And so one of the challenges that I think was, really pivotal for us in our sampling system, because that's a whole new thing to gather samples on Mars, is we actually were exchanging one of our drill bits, and we actually saw these small rocks, small pebbles in part of our mechanism. And we were like, oh, where'd those come from? Could they get stuck? Could they jam our mechanism, prevent it from ever working again? And so that actually took several weeks to carefully go through and figure out a way that we could move stuff around and get those pebbles out of the system so they didn't get jammed. So yeah, challenges like that are hard to work through with people here on Earth and a rover on Mars, but we did manage to persevere. Thanks.
Okay, we have a great question that came in the chat that Rick, you sort of referenced earlier, but maybe someone else can speak to their particular lens on this. Sapphire Smiley is wondering, how has the COVID-19 pandemic impacted your missions? How did NASA ensure the safety and success of such complex missions? Which that's a great that was
question.
A thing.
Yeah, that absolutely was. We have several team members who, went through that firsthand with COVID. I am curious, Louise, would you like to take that question from your perspective of how that was for you?
Sure. So for us, COVID started while we were still delivering hardware to the spacecraft and getting it to the launch pad. And so that included the sampling system that Rick just referenced. And so we had a combination of folks that were following really strict protocols to keep everybody healthy and safe in order to come in and work with the hardware, while the rest of the team, if you didn't have to do something directly on some of the sampling hardware in terms of testing it or assembling it, were working remotely from home. And just like everybody in the country, sometime our connections worked great and sometimes not as well. So I think, you know, and the set of people that came in were different every day. So that was a struggle to manage it and to communicate properly all the time. But I think we persevered like many other people and made it through that. And then I'll just fast forward to you saw us when we first came into mission ops to operate the rover in the video, and you see many of us, you see us distanced, then you see us masked, and that was a new way for us to work, but we made it work.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yep, we made it work. Okay, I'm going to pass it along to Aiden. Aiden, what's your question?
I kind of have two. One, sorry about that. One is
Yep.
like,
Uh-oh, a little bit of
sorry,
a,
someone else is in the room.
maybe they can mute their mic.
Okay, so my question, I have two questions. One, how long does it take to get a transmission from where you are to Mars?
All right, we have one of our systems engineers, Matt Mazinski, on the line. So I'm going to turn that one over to Matt. Oh, you're not on the line. Never mind. He's in the room. He was the one who displayed the EVRs for you guys. I had him on my list. Let's see. How about, do we have Stephanie Murillo on the line? She is one of our DSN schedulers. I saw her called in earlier.
Yeah, Stephanie was here.
And also, if we could, how long would we be able to stay in space if we just took all of the necessities? How long would we be able to be in space? If you can answer that.
Okay, so Aiden that had
Okay.
those two questions. Let's answer that first one, which we definitely know, which is
Yeah.
transmission time between Earth and Mars. And Aiden, we'll give it to you for today. Beth, do we know what the light time between Earth and Mars is today?
That's
or
a
this
great
week?
question. I do not know what it is today.
Okay.
Does anyone in the room, if you know?
We do have or we have a general range.
Oh, we
often
got an
give.
answer. Someone raised
I
their
love
hand
it.
in 8 minutes and 22 seconds. So we had someone look it up in real time.
Love it.
There you go. So
Okay.
Aiden, that was your first question. And then your second one was about if you brought all the supplies, how long could, I love that your name also says future astronaut on it. That's so great. How long could we, potentially survive in space? Is your question related to like a Mars mission specifically, or more of sort of an astronaut question?
It's just kind of like, because I know on Mars there's water, so there may be water, so we might be able to stay on Mars longer. But like, if we were just like trying to just like see how long we could like we want to use all of the resources, but if we were to see how long we could go.
Yes, that's a great question. Yeah, so I'm going to turn that one over to Steve Lee so that Steve, you can take your sort of prediction or best guess at that, as well as some of the challenges to actually be able to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a fantastic question, and one that NASA has really been trying to figure out. Because we do know that there are some challenges to staying in space for a long period of time. You mentioned one, which is how do you eat? How do you get water? How do you have the basic necessities? But even if you bring those things along, there are some other challenges. And maybe the biggest one that could be the biggest limit on how long you can stay in space is your bones, believe it or not. On Earth, just the fact of walking around or using things, your bones stay strong and healthy. But in space, in zero G, when everything is floating and everything is really easy and it's easy to move around, your bones don't get the exercise they need And eventually they actually start to wear down a little bit, or actually start to kind of degrade just from lack of use. So there's a International Space Station that's been orbiting the Earth for several decades now, and they've been doing research on this. And they find, first, it's very important to exercise a lot in space, and we're talking a couple hours a day to prevent that bone loss. And even then, we know that there's still some bone loss, but we have done experiments where astronauts have successfully stayed on board the space station for over a year. Can you imagine that, in space orbiting the Earth for over a year? And in fact, there was a great experiment done a few years ago where there were two astronauts who were identical twins, the Kelly brothers. And to do a test, they sent one to space, and they had the other one stay here, and both of them took various tests, and that way they can directly measure with identical genetics how does the bone degradation happen over time. So hopefully the answer looks like the more we exercise, if you really keep that up, you can stay for really long periods of time. But doing a year, that should be long enough for a Mars mission. To go there one way takes maybe a year or so, and then if you've kept up your strength, you land on Mars. Mars has gravity, so you're moving around, you're using your muscles and your bones, and then you have another year on the way back. And so I think things look promising now, but there's still more research to be done. But fantastic question. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to take one from the chat now. This is from Lucy. Is it possible that the rover could last longer than the intended mission?
Yes, absolutely. I'm going to turn that one over to our project manager, Art Thompson, to take a crack at that one.
Well, thank you, Beth, and thanks for that question. The answer is we fully expect that this rover will last a lot longer than our prime mission. In fact, every rover we've sent up there, this being our 5th, has well outlasted the life expectancy of our spacecraft. Our prime mission ended basically a month ago, which was one Mars year. Our extended prime mission goes on for another 8 years, and we fully expect that this rover will outlast our extended prime mission.
Nice, so that you will be driving this thing for a while. Okay, I'm going to take one. I see Isabel, you have your hand up.
Yes. What would finding life on another planet mean for life here on Earth?
Oh, great question. Let's see. Keith Como, do you want to take that one?
Okay, I'll give that one a shot. That's a very profound question, and I'm not sure if anybody can really anticipate how humanity might respond to discovering life on Mars or any other place in the solar system. But I think for me, finding life right here in our backyard in Mars or at Europa or some other place in the solar system, I think is a clue to scientists that life is probably teeming everywhere in the universe, and we just haven't found it because we haven't been able to explore those hard to reach places. And so that's what Perseverance is designed to do, is to go look for evidence of past life in that ancient wet environment in Jezero Crater. And so hopefully we'll find some clues that might help us answer that question and find out what the real answer is once we actually answer it.
That would change everything, wouldn't it, Keith?
Yes, it would. And I'll take a moment here just to introduce myself and maybe say a word or two about our sample return campaign. A moment ago, there was a question about how long Perseverance was going to last. Well, it's going to last for quite a long time based on the history of our rovers that we've built. And I'm working on the next set of missions that will design and build and fly a lander to meet Perseverance at the end of its mission to deliver all the samples it's collected to a rocket that will then blast off from Mars, fly into orbit, and meet yet another spacecraft that's going to be built by our European partners and bring those samples home to Earth in the year 2033. And those samples will be taken to a secure facility and studied for any evidence that there might be signatures of life that have been preserved in those rocks for many billions of years. So We're looking forward to that. That's going to keep us busy for the next decade or so. And some of you who might be graduating in that time frame might actually find yourself working on one of those missions or actually studying those rocks if you become a scientist. So looking forward to that.
Hey, Keith, I wanted to ask, did I hear that you had a connection to one of the students on the webinar?
That is in fact the case. Carter Mayu
Carter.
is currently going to my high school at Catholic High in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. I'm an 85 graduate, so it's good to see my hometown there being represented by Carter.
Yes, sir. Go Bears.
Go Bears.
Go Bears. Love it. Okay, Brielle, would you like to ask your question?
What programming language do you use in the Perseverance?
What programming language do we use on Perseverance? All right, we do have Mark Mamone on the line, who is one of our flight software developers, among other things, including Rover Planner. So
Actually, Beth, Mark said
did
he
he
was
drop
having,
off?
yeah, he said he was having some connection issues.
Oh,
So he's
okay.
not able to do the planning.
This
Okay.
is Robert. I can take that one, Beth.
Go for it,
great.
Robert.
Great question, everybody. As you all know, these days, programming languages are important for a lot of stuff that we do, and at NASA, very important. So specifically, our rover uses a real-time operating system called VxWorks, which means each action that it's doing can be characterized in an exact amount of time. And because of that, we usually use C or C++. That works best with VxWorks. And those languages are best for doing programming that you need things to happen right away or very fast. So mostly it was C earlier on, and then in the last 10 years, we've been using lots of C++ too. But then also on the ground tools that the team uses there in the room, there's other languages that are used, and the most, let's see, the one that's used the most is called Python. It's a scripting language, if you all know what that means. So anyway, that's the short version, but any programming language that will work well, that's a good tool, we will take it on and we will use it.
Yeah, and as a follow-on to that, one of our team members, Kyle Kaplan from the sampling team, is here, and I know that they use quite a lot of those scripting languages within there. So Kyle, perhaps you can talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. Yeah, so we use Python pretty heavily in all of our downlink tools to assess the health and safety and performance of our sampling system. So anytime we get new data, we process it. We push it through a bunch of Python tools, and we generate a bunch of reports that we use to do our downlink assessment. So just today, we got new data from the rover, and we pushed it through our tools, and we used it to assess how that all went. So it's really important to have tools like Python that allow us to do that type of work.
Thank you.
This is great real world advice, because students can be now looking for ways that they could learn some of these programming languages and perhaps be operating spacecraft in the future. Love it. I'm going to take a question from Maya. Maya, what's on your mind?
How is the Mars test environment for Ingenuity created on Earth?
So that was a tiny bit quiet for us. I heard something about how was the test environment. Can you repeat the question?
How was the Mars test environment for Ingenuity created on Earth?
Oh, how was the test environment created on Earth?
For Ingenuity.
Oh, for Ingenuity.
Ingenuity.
I missed the Ingenuity part.
Yeah.
Ooh, we don't have anyone directly from Ingenuity on the line right now. However, that's a great question. Rick, do you want to answer what you know about?
Sure, I can do that. Maybe Robert could jump in too.
Oh, right, Robert.
You know, one of the things for all of our spacecraft, because space is a vacuum, so we have some very large vacuum chambers here at JPL, and we can actually control the pressure. So we actually put the helicopter in one of those chambers. It's about 25 feet in diameter, and we pumped it down so it would be the equivalent of the Mars atmospheric density, which is very, very thin. It's only about 1% of the atmospheric density on Earth, and that's the big challenge for flying a helicopter on Mars is the atmospheric atmosphere is so thin. And it was really those tests in that special facility here at JPL that proved that we could have a rotorcraft actually fly in a low density environment. Robert, anything else to add?
Oh, that was great, Rick. Yeah, and so when you're testing for Mars, you want to worry about the pressure that Rick just talked about. It's about 1/100th of Earth's pressure, and the temperature on Mars is usually colder than Earth. And so we also tested Ingenuity in the same big chamber, and we were able to bring the temperature of that chamber all the way down as cold as -90 Celsius or -120 Celsius. And then the last thing, which is very hard to test on Earth, is gravity. Mars's gravity is different than, if you were on Mars, it would be pulling on your body about 2/5 of what you're feeling right now. And so that's very hard to test. And a couple of times the Ingenuity team took a string or like a rubber band and just hung Ingenuity from it a little bit to help offset some of that Earth gravity. But you never know, you really discover what happens with all these different environmental conditions once you finally get the helicopter to Mars or the rover to Mars and try it. And then, if we do our job well, then it works out well. And then that's what happened with Ingenuity.
Yes, and the Ingenuity's made over 40 flights now. So it is working really well. So what a great question, Maya, to understand that you do need to test in the conditions that you will be flying in. So as much as you can replicate a way to test things so you can work out all the bugs before you send it to another planet, that's a good idea. All right, I'm kind of checking the chat here, but I'm going to go with a raised hand. Actually, let's ask another one of Kriti's questions. Kriti had a few questions. Let's see. Oh, this is a good one. Kriti asks, what is the most fun part of your workday? And does Perseverance work all of the time? So let's talk about fun.
All right, fun. I'm going to turn it over to Justin Mackey, who
always has fun.
He always has fun, always is looking at these amazing images. And so Justin can tell you a little bit about what's most fun about what he does.
Okay, great question. So one of my roles on the project is that I'm in charge of a lot of the cameras on the rover. So the most fun part for me every morning, and this is the first thing I do literally before I even check my email, is check the image data that came down overnight. And a lot of times when the rover is driving, where we drive to a new location, we go up over a hill and we get the images down, and we use those images to actually plan the next day's activities. And so what we do is we take an entire day's worth of commands, put them all together in what we call a bundle, command bundle, and then we send it to the rover. And then the rover has to spend the next day clocking out those commands. Every single command we send, it has to do it, and then sends the data back to us at the end of the day. And then we start it all over the next day, where we get the images back, we see what the rover did, and we just keep repeating that. And so it's pretty exciting for me and a lot of the team, especially in this room, where we all look at the data that come back from Mars. Every day it's new. Every day is a new day on Mars. And so there's a little excitement there to see how things went. And sometimes when they don't quite go as we plan, that's also quite interesting, because that's part of our job to try to figure out what happened and why did it do this instead of that. And we look at all the data, and in this room here, everyone then reports their status. The rover did this, we have to do this other thing, and so on. And it's very technical, and it's very interesting if you really like engineering and science too. There's a whole nother group of scientists that are poring over every single image that we get and coming up with where to go on that next day. So it's exciting for me and everybody here, because like I said, it's new. Every day is new day on Mars. And then as far as the rover goes, the rovers were pretty much working all the time. It's a robot, so it doesn't mind. So we just give it commands for an entire day. It does take naps because it doesn't have enough energy to go the entire, all the time. So it actually has to go to sleep. So we actually shut down the computer, you shut down your computer to conserve your battery so you don't lose your battery. Same thing with the rover. The rover takes a break, charges up his battery, and then starts again the next day. So very exciting. Actually, these missions that's one of the things about these missions. They're very exciting. Every day is a new day, and we all really enjoy it.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Justin. I will piggyback on that for a second and also add, we talked about the rover and how the rover is working every day, but I think it's important to tell you that that doesn't mean the humans are working every single day. And we do some really cool things, like for example, on the weekends. And so we want to take generally the weekend off and get some rest. And so what we now do that we've been on operating for a while is that on Fridays, we will send up 3 Mars days worth of commands. So not just for the Friday, but also covering the weekend so that we can, take some downtime and get our weekends too. And as you guys know, President's Weekend's coming up. And so actually we're doing something a little bit different there where we're planning 2 days on the two Mars days on the Thursday and then 3 on Friday so that we can also get President's Day off. So that's one of the really cool things, about, we can, when we send up those commands is making them as long as is necessary for us. But when we first landed, we really wanted to maximize the amount of information that we got and really, really maximize our knowledge, especially as we were doing commissioning. And so with that, we did work the weekends, and we would actually do something called Mars time, where we would work when the solar rover was awake. So a lot of this team got to participate in some very interesting cycles with that. So, all right. And I think we're ready for our next question.
Yeah. So just to add that, yes, these are robots, but these are robots controlled by humans. So of course we do have to be mindful of the toll that things like going on Mars time or operating a really intense complex mission, the toll it takes on humans. So it's wonderful that now we are mindful that the teams need their downtime as well, so they can bring their best selves to operate this rover. So I'm going to take just 2 more questions. So I'm going to take one from Natalie. I see that you are in there. Natalie's representing with her NASA shirt, might I add? Natalie, what's your question?
I have 2 questions, but did the rover face any challenges heading to Mars?
Yes, let's see. I'm going to turn that over to Lauren Jones from our engineering operations team to answer that one.
Great, thanks, Beth. Yeah, this is Lauren Jones. I was on the cruise launch operations team, and one of the things that happened actually while I was on shift, we had a failure of a temperature sensor, and the response of that failure was the spacecraft runs some routines to clear out that failure and then swap over to the other side. We have redundant hardware just in case things break like that. So it swapped over to the other side, but you can imagine I'm on the ground and watching the telemetry go by, and I'm seeing warnings and warnings. I'm like, whoa, what's going on? And then of course, training kicked in. We calmed down and we did what we were supposed to do to call the rest of the team back. And get everybody primed up and looking at the data to understand what happened, and then we made a plan for what we needed to do for the next few days and work around that one failed part. So yeah, we did have some excitement in the first days after launch. It was pretty smooth sailing after that, though.
Thank you. And also, how does the rover test the new technology that could help bring astronauts to Mars?
Oh, that's a good one.
What's that?
Moxie.
Yeah, who wants to Justin, do you want to talk about Moxie?
Sure. So one of the really interesting instruments that we have on the rover is an instrument called Moxie, and it's a little compact oxygen generation system. And what it does is it pulls CO2 out of the Martian atmosphere and converts it into oxygen that you could use to breathe. And it's been a very successful instrument. It's the first time it's ever been tried on Mars. And up to this date, we've generated about 93 grams of oxygen, which is enough for an astronaut to breathe for, I should know this off the top of my head, but it's, tens of minutes. So it's pretty exciting technology. So that is one instrument on this mission that's for the first time ever it's been demonstrated. So that's probably the most important for astronauts. Other instruments we have measure dust, which is also an important thing to understand if you're going to be on Mars for any extended period. So we measure how much dust accumulates, how much dust is in the atmosphere. But I think the oxygen generation is probably the biggest item.
Thank you, Justin. Okay. I'm going to thank you, Natalie. And Isabel, I'm going to have you bring it home. Get the last question.
What led you to create the Perseverance Award?
So what led us to create this award here? Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a great question. Sarah, do you want to take that question?
Sure, but this actually came out of your mission team. I believe
Oh, okay.
I believe that members of the Perseverance rover team, sort of they wanted some way to both celebrate the perseverance of, kind of their mission team members, but also have some way to connect with students and to inspire students. So I think it was kind of hatched between maybe a few teams at JPL, but the idea that, wow, sort of the challenges that you had trying to, build, test, launch, and land a rover during a time when we all had to work remotely, and how, pushing through that and then wanting to hear the stories of students who had similar challenges in their own life, where they had to push through whatever situations were happening with them and keep with their education and keep their focus on school and improving and doing better. So it really was kind of a team effort. And I think that's a neat question. We've never been asked that before. But the idea is, students, we want to celebrate the, determination and persistence, because it really is, that is a life skill, I think, that will get you far. And I think, Beth and Rick, you could say that so many people in that room with you and our other NASA experts online, have pushed through a lot of things, and perhaps in their journeys to get to NASA had to persist through, challenges or things that they didn't understand, they had to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everyone has their, their own unique struggles and situations in life. And I think that, everyone has that journey that takes them here. But overall, what I was talking about at the beginning of just, whatever you're passionate about, continuing forward with that, I think that that's really the thread that, holds us all together with how we're here and what we care about, and in our community and our careers.
Yeah, and we definitely care about getting the next generation of engineers and scientists. As you know, this rover is going to be working for, we hope, many more years, but our nominal next mission phase is 8 years. And then, as Keith Como mentioned, we have follow-on missions that perhaps we hope will bring samples of Mars to Earth for study. So then a whole international team of scientists can be looking at these rock and atmosphere and soil samples from Mars. So, wow, there's really many people who will need to be trained and, to operate these missions and interact with these samples. So thank you so much. I'm going to wrap up our questions now. So to our students, thank you for such excellent questions. You were clearly very well prepared and on your way to careers in aerospace. Next week, you'll get a package in the mail, which will have some goodies in it, including very own Mars 2020 mission pin, so you can feel like you're part of the team. So look for that in the next week or two. And I want to thank all of our mission team members, and especially Beth and Rick and Art and everybody who answered questions, for being online with us today. And Rick, I thought maybe I'd turn it over to you to send us out with a few words.
Sure. And thank you all for joining today. Happy to have you in mission operations. I love seeing some NASA t-shirts and cool backgrounds out there. Obviously, some of you are very interested in that. I know, I grew up, during Apollo. I was 6 years old when the first astronaut stepped on the surface of the moon, and 13 when the Viking landers, our first landers, successful landers on Mars, landed there. And so for me, I was always interested in space. And hard work, in studying led me to actually be able to work on all the rovers. And so it's so exciting. So I'm sure, given the tenacity you've shown so far in your lives, whatever you're interested in, whether it's NASA, whether it's exploring or mountain climbing or poetry or whatever you might be interested in, I'm sure you will do well in your lifetimes. Just remember to keep on persevering. And so with that, why don't we play those messages one more time?